Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were ready. You said you nodded.
I was not. I thought you were like in a vulnerable moment saying, "Hey, I'm kind of done with this because of this," and so I'm like, yes, tell me more.
I said I'm done with shenanigans and shenanigans. Here's the deal: is I got out shenaniganed by the team. So
oh man, did you ever?
Yeah.
Like literally, as you were for those. Okay, let me just say. If you are a podrishner and you were not able to be in person, but you were either viewing or listening before the sermon started, there was a bit of an object lesson in which Greg, Dan, and myself were led through a mystery box situation that Daniel, the host, was leading us through. It was a callback to 2 years ago when we started Revelation, and we did this mystery box because it's about the unveiling, and it's a mystery, and we're uncovering lies and revealing truth and all of that. And so that's what Dan is talking about right now. Dan got the worst of it, I will say. Psychologically, I got the worst of it because
that's true.
I saw Greg's and then I saw yours and I thought, oh, they're getting progressively worse.
That makes sense.
I was just out of my mind. So that's the setup. But Dan went through it and Dan took one for the team. And my question for you, Dan, is when you were, because you were in there, like I was watching it back. You were in there. Did you have any clue? Because you said brains, which did you have any?
I did.
Inkling that?
Yeah. In fact, I even said it. I said it before he pulled the box off the top. I said it's worms.
Okay.
So I did
heard
get it.
Someone say worms. I thought that was someone else. Okay.
Interesting. Because they could see my hands and they could see everything in the box.
Yeah.
And somebody told me to go lower. And so like I was following those directions.
Okay.
But I didn't hear anybody say worms. So
well, I think it was you that said it then. And I just thought it was someone else because I was kind of tooting my horn of I'm the only one who guessed correctly of the three of us.
Interesting.
But now now you're taking that away from me because
sorry about that.
I did not. I was not the only one.
But you are right. You did have the worst of it in terms of the suspense because it did seem like it was going to get progressively more horrifying. And I'll say, the worms were pretty gross. And I'm very grateful that I picked them up so they could wriggle in the air. That was.
And that's the thing. Like I didn't like Greg. I don't know if you probably didn't notice because you had your hands. You were doing the thing. Greg was looking back at the screen, so he knew what was happening. I did not. I was just looking ahead, and I was reacting to you. So I didn't know until they ripped up the box and they were like, "It's worms," and I was like, "Oh God, no! I'm out. I'm so done with this game. I'm out."
Yeah, and that's it. You said, I'm done.
Yeah.
That was the best.
I'm gonna go. And then the funny part is, one young woman, she's like, "Are you really that like, or were you pretending?" I'm like, "Oh, I wish I were pretending."
Yeah.
Like I am so easily startled. People can scare me. Like and it is just a weird thing for me. I thought I could garden and I cannot because I don't like creepy crawlies. I was outside. I was doing things and I was like, oh, that's right. There's stuff in this earth. I'm out. I'm done. I can't do it. So no, that was all 1000% authentic. And then a friend of mine who is married to, I'm not going to throw his name under the bus, but a certain staff member of ours, coworker of ours, who initiated all of this and who put it all together, his wife texted me and she's like, "I need you to know that I had your back this week because he really wanted to give you the worms." And I told him, "Don't you dare." So thank you, my friend. You know who you are. And I told that particular coworker, he's no longer a friend. He is no
Yeah,
longer a friend. He is just a coworker.
He's on thin ice.
I said to him, if you had done that, I would have run off the stage, out the doors, and you would just never see me again. Like, that would be it. Shawna out, gone, and I wonder what happened to her. Like, it would be over. So you handled it so beautifully well. Way to go, Dan.
You know, and I'm very fortunate because, you know, as a kid, I fished a lot and we would use worms. And so I could handle the worms. I've been desensitized to the worms. If it was like a big spider or something, then I would have been out, but, or even a snake or whatever. And, you know, so, I mean, they went to put a poisonous snake in, but snakes are a little slimy. So that would have been a little creepy, but, yeah, they did a good job. It was well done.
A lot of HR violations, a lot of any kind of therapy bill. I'm going to send it to this particular coworker because, wow. Yeah. But they did do a good job.
And you and I are both accumulating incidents for our legal case against the church at some point. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking class action lawsuit. We're talking big money.
Yeah, that's
we're
right.
We're talking $10-12.
That's at least. Yeah, at least.
Anyway, but the whole point of it, which, just really quick, I did have one person come to me afterwards at the visitor desk where I manned my post, and she was like, "That was so great. What was the point?"
Yeah, I had that too. Shawna, I went to Whole Foods to get a tomato and some grapes and some blueberries, and Esther, who is a parishioner, was there.
Hi, Esther.
And she's like, how did that relate to the sermon? And Daniel explained it. He did a great job explaining it, but I think
he explained it really well.
Yeah, but everybody was so into the mystery box that they probably didn't even hear him. So
they didn't even, they weren't connecting those dots. So this mystery box shenanigan that we went through was just a precursor, just a kind of a reminder of like, hey, the overarching series that we are in Revelation is called The Unveiling, where we are, remember, unmasking lies and discovering the truth. And this was just a fun way to play that out. And we did that on Sunday because it was, like we said, that around the 2-year anniversary from when we started Revelation, of course, taking a few breaks here and there for some other little mini series, but it also was marking like our entry back in to Revelation. And so we have started a new sub-series in Revelation called Dragon Slayers. And Greg kicked us off with Flee to the Wilderness.
All right. Yay. Good job. Good job.
It's the little things, Dan.
Yes.
It's the little things.
Yes.
So he kicked us off with Flee to the Wilderness, Dragon Slayers. We're in Revelation. What are the chapters? 12?
12 and 13. Yep.
12 and 13.
Yep.
I'm with us. I'm all in. I'm good.
Yeah. Well, and it's, we're kind of in the middle of Revelation, somewhere in the middle, and it's all such a jumble of imagery, and it's like a crazy psychedelic dream. So it's easy to get lost in the numbers, especially when each of the verses has a bunch of crazy numbers in it as well. Oof. And it's like you can get lost pretty easy. Yeah. But yeah, we're in 12 and 13, and I will give a little sneak peek. This is like we're looking through the periscope and the telescope and the microscope and everything. But down the road, we're going to do 14, 15, and 16 all in one series. So that's what I'm saying. We're starting to take bigger chunks here. And so we're going to get through it. But yeah, Flee to the Wilderness. Now, originally I thought it was FLEA, to the wilderness. And I thought there was going to be a nice little story about a flea who got lost in the big city and he found his way back to the wilderness. That's not what Greg talked about, but he could have, because that could have been a good story as well. But instead, he looked at chapter 12, and he really took a big chunk, and he kind of worked his way through the first 6 verses. And I'm not going to go through everything that he talked about there, just because there was a lot of unpacking of the text. But he looked at the woman who's referred to there. And a weird image about this pregnant woman whose feet are on the moon and things like that. And well, this woman represents the people of God, and she's clothed in the sun. She's wearing the sun. And there's this dragon who wants to kill the child that she's going to give birth to, which of course is the lamb, is the son of God. And this dragon is blood red because he's full of evil, and he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And there's a lot of imagery there about how he is the 1/3. He is the Trinity wannabe. He is the pseudo God. And he kind of, him and the other angels who rebelled against God are basically reaping all of this destruction. And they have this sort of false authority that's captured in this iron scepter. And so that's sort of kind of the characters that we're looking at here. But the other thing too is that what's discussed there is this idea of this concept of the wilderness is tapped into in these verses. And the wilderness plays a big role in the Bible, in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And when God rescues his people out of Egypt, he guides them out into the wilderness, where they spend 40 years in this sort of desolate place, being sustained by manna and quail and this water producing rock and just these miraculous forms of sustenance. But they're really tested out there, And of course, we know that Jesus, after he is baptized, he's immediately tested in the wilderness. And so too, we have here this call to the wilderness. And what's interesting about that is part of the language that's used here is this idea that the lamb is brought up into heaven. And a lot of people use that language there to talk about rapture. And Greg makes, I think, a really great point that it doesn't really seem like that makes sense, because we're actually called to go to the wilderness. And rapture is this idea of kind of getting out of the wilderness. It's getting out of trouble. And yeah, it's true that Jesus was brought up into heaven, but after he suffered and after he fulfilled his role in God's plan, then he was brought up. And so too for us, we are called to not flee from the wilderness, but to flee into the wilderness. And that was sort of the main point that Greg is making, is that we're not called to run away from danger. We're not called to run away from the suffering of others. We're called to run to it so that we can serve and fulfill God's role here as Christ's hands and feet, in the same way that Christ, he went to people who were sick and he healed them, and he went to people who were needy and he fed them. Well, now we are his hands and his feet, and we are also called to go into that wilderness and to do what Jesus would have done. And so Greg just ends this sermon, I think, with a really great question, which is how would you think that the Lord would lead you into the wilderness? And because there's a lot of wilderness, and we each have different gifts and different abilities, and therefore we have different opportunities to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And so I think that's an important question. How can we best serve those in the wilderness? And then Greg just ended with a prayer, praying for this calling in each of our lives. I know I skipped a bunch of stuff, but there's just a lot of details, and that is my summary, trying to bring all of that together into something cohesive. What did you think of now after the trauma? You got to let the trauma sort of calm down, and I admit I had a hard time paying attention right away because I still had worms on the brain, not worms in the brain, worms on the brain. And so it took me a couple minutes to focus, but I finally came around, and
got there.
I thought it was a great start to the series. What did you think?
I agree. Okay, yes. Post-traumatic situation that we were a part of together. It took me a minute to recalibrate. And then once I did, totally was honestly blown away by the direction Greg took with this sermon. I knew, those first, 4 to 5 verses are just, there is a lot of symbolism, a lot of things to unpack, a lot of things to kind of talk about and define. And like, what the heck are we seeing there? And this dragon with all the heads and the crowns and the woman and where, all the things. And the baby and devouring and all of that and the numerology with it all. So I knew that we were going to have to kind of sift through that in order to properly set up everything else to come in the series. And then kind of when he shifted focus and went into verse 6 in particular, I was just honestly blown away by the challenge to flee to the wilderness and the implications of that on our lives today. And I really appreciated the common everyday opportunities that he didn't discuss them all because you can't, but he gave some real opportunities that we have as a community, as a part of Woodland Hills, to do that. And I think it was just so great, but then still very challenging. And I don't know that I was expecting that. I think my brain was set for, okay, sifting through, this means this and this symbol that and this, and then from the Old Testament it's a call back to this. Like that's kind of where like my brain was expecting to land, and we did some of that, but then really the robust part of it and really his focus was like, hey, we have this call and almost like this beckoning to actually not avoid and flee from, but to flee to the wilderness. And I loved it. I thought it was great. And then just the reminder, and again, you and I, we say this all the time on the MuseCast. Happy Muse Day, everyone, if I didn't say that. Oopsie. We say this all the time, like, in this world, you will have trouble. To think that following Jesus means, we just get to sit back and relax and it's cush and your best life now. That doesn't mean that you will never have joy or blessings, because remember, the gospel is good news. So don't hear me say that it's not. It is absolutely good news. But man, I think there are so many who falsely believe that following Jesus is just a ticket away from trouble and a get out of jail free card and just a way to avoid, stuff. And in particular, martyrdom and tribulations and persecutions and things. We have this idea of, God's going to save us from that because we've been faithful. I mean, Jesus had to go through some things, so I don't know why we think we would not also need to go through some stuff. But again, not to like make it like this downer thing, but in this world we will have trouble, but take heart because he has overcome the world. And I just thought this was a great start to the series, a great reminder, and a beautiful, lovely challenge. So thumbs up.
It's a good point too about in this world you will have trouble, and but at the same time, in the Lord's Prayer, we're told to lead us not into temptation and testing. And so it's not like we have to seek it out or anything like that. I mean, we definitely flee to the wilderness to the extent that you serve the best you can to those in your life, and but it's not like we're not going to earn any extra points for going out and martyring ourselves or anything like that. When Jesus says, in this life you will have trouble, that means that you don't have to go seek it out. It'll find you. And you know what?
Find you.
That's right. And if it's and if you avoid it, if if it's true that lead us not into temptation and testing, if that comes true, then you don't have to feel guilty about that either. It's just that when you try to avoid or try to seek out, that's where your heart is. I think there's potential danger there for your heart. Like, and I'll just say this for me. I'm inclined to seek ways out of the wilderness. I'm what the classic thinkers call a coward. So I'm a coward true. In the classic sense. And I don't like pain. I don't even like spicy food. So I mean I'm trying to I would like to live a life where I never have to be a prisoner of war or anything like that,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
so, it's I think it's spiritually dangerous for me. It's spiritually dangerous to devote too much of my heart and energy to avoiding those types of
Mm-hmm.
dangers,
Mm-hmm.
because if the place where God has me in the world, if there's tribulation there, well, I'm his hands and feet there.
Yeah.
And I think that is where we're called to act, and what that
Mm-hmm.
exactly looks like. How do I do that without just foolishly seeking it out? How do I do
Mm-hmm.
that without cowardly hiding from it? I don't know, but that's, I think,
Yeah.
what we're called for.
Yeah, that's a great clarification. Oopsies.
There you
That's a
go.
great clarification of I think what we are trying to communicate. Greg was trying to communicate. There's it is nuanced. So when I say yes, in this world you will have trouble, I am in no way trying to say, oh well, ain't nothing that can be done about it, well, God just he wants us to deal with it. No, like I fully believe that it is biblical and it is wise to pray for protection, to discern and use wisdom as to where I go and how I go and all the things that you encounter in life. We're just saying that just because we are Jesus followers doesn't mean we are immune to the fallen world and the things that occur in the fallen world. And it doesn't mean that we are not at play in the spiritual battle that we've talked about that is happening, and the things that we're seeing here in Revelation between the beast and the lamb and the followers and those who followed the beast. Like we are at play in that. There is a battle going on. We need to be wise to that. And at the same time, remember that when trouble befalls us, it's not God trying to teach us a lesson or anything like that. It's just, sometimes it's spiritual warfare. Sometimes it's just living in this fallen world. Like there's a million variables as to why bad things happen. How are we responding in those moments? How are we showing up in those moments when we see someone else hurting or experiencing something? I love the visual that you've given about being the hands and feet of Jesus, because that's what we are. We are armor bearers. We are representatives of Jesus, and that means at all times. And that means when things are going great and when things are troubling. And so we can show up differently and we can help in different ways.
Yeah.
I think is what we're saying.
Yeah, I
And
think that's right.
remember, like, this is just sermon one in the series. There'll be more conversations and more things to dig through and unpack and dive into. So we're not going to hit it all in one fell swoop.
That's right.
All right.
However, the chat, there was a question on the
Oh,
chat.
yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
There was something in the chat that
yeah.
you actually saw.
Hmm.
Now you're going to have to remember it, Dan, because we don't
Yeah,
we don't have a means by which to save the chat.
that's right.
You want
It's
to?
gone.
It's gone. But I'm trusting that brain of yours.
Well, this is the best I can do.
Okay.
And I'm sure I missed some of the nuance to it, but the question, and I don't even know if it was a he or she or I don't even remember the name of the person, and because I thought I could go back, and apparently I can't. So I'm learning
Nope.
about
Yeah.
that. But the question was somewhere in the spirit of, if the wilderness is a place of testing, and
Mm-mm.
we can go there and we can pass or fail that test, and there's a lot of questions around that by itself. But the question that this person asked had to do with Jesus in the wilderness being
Mm-hmm.
tested, and the
Mm-hmm.
question was, could Jesus have failed that test?
I saw
And
that.
yeah, and it's a really good question. It's another way of saying, could Jesus fail or could Jesus sin? And I will say that there's differences of opinion about that in theology and in the early church. And on one hand, it's like it's amazing to ponder how horrible reality would be if Jesus failed the test. And
Yeah.
because all of that hope of being the Messiah, of being God's faithful servant and all of that would be threatened. I don't. I wouldn't go as far to say is that all hope would be lost because it's God, and but the situation would be much more dire. I would say that. But so there's this temptation to think, well, God would never put Jesus in a situation where he could fail because there's too much on the line. And I understand that perspective, and that perspective might be right. But part of me wonders, why wouldn't God put Jesus under that level of? He puts us under that level of test. He places before us life and death, fire and water, blessings and curses, and he tells us to reach out our hand for whichever we choose. It's not like we're better than Jesus. So, so part of me wants to say, well, maybe he could have failed the test, but he demonstrates his radical faithfulness and passes the test. As I've gotten older, I've been more attracted to that view because otherwise, I feel like God has thrown you and me into the deep end of the pool, and Jesus is over in the shallow end with the little floaty arm muscle things on, and I just don't think that that's not the God that I see in Jesus. I see Jesus going right in, and the way that Hebrews puts it is that he is tested in every way, like his brothers and sisters, and he is made like his brothers and sisters in every way. And what's so amazing about Jesus isn't that he had some special advantage over us. It's that he didn't have a special advantage over us, and that he was faithful nonetheless. And so that's my answer to it. There are differences of opinion, and there are, theological trade-offs from my view, but that's what I think. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that yourself.
Yeah, no, again, people debate this and argue about it and see it in different ways, but I lean toward the scripture that you actually recalled about he was tempted and tested in every way. And I think back to when he did face the temptation, when the enemy led him and said, hey, what about this, what about that? Like, I never got the sense that was just a meh. Nah, I got the sense that while Christ was focused and knew his purpose, that those were actual temptations. Like that there was maybe a wrestling or a struggle. I'm not saying that he had to tarry over it or anything. I'm just saying I feel like human form, and he wrestled with things and was presented with opportunities and options, and he chose to remain faithful. So that's all. But that's just one lady's opinion.
Yeah. I think that's right. I
Good
agree with
question.
that.
Good question. And there will be more to come. And so we actually had a couple of throwbacks to a few previous sermons. Now, this will take us out of Revelation and into our last series, but I think that's okay because remember, more to come. We're just getting started with Dragon Slayers.
And it's good to do a little house cleaning and catch up on some questions.
So people think that we're not ignoring them and all the things. So let me, okay. Oh, do you want the one that was kind of related to your message from a few weeks ago? Or do we want to
go either way.
Okay. Well, that's one I have pulled up. Okay. That's one I have pulled up. So, it's a few weeks ago when you talked about hierarchy, baboons, all the things you recall.
Baboons.
Yes, it is a challenge to the Anabaptist message as a whole. How is it that God can judge the nations, but God and Jesus did not instruct the earthly kings on how to operate their earthly empires? Jesus, this is the person who sent it in, Jesus sidesteps the question of how Rome should operate.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't have a great answer for it. Maybe you do, but I will say at least this. and this is it's all fresh in my mind because I've been really kind of diving into history these last few weeks.
Oh, okay.
And I'll just say the one thing a nation will be judged for is what their public propaganda is and what their
Mm.
actual motivations are. And
Mm-hmm.
what you see is those two things are very different. And
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite example of that is Russia under Lenin and Stalin, where it's all about we're all sharing
Be careful,
everything.
Dan.
Yeah,
Be careful.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Guns into plowshares and all of that, and then, but in reality, the leaders were thugs, thieves, just trying to make a bunch of personal wealth, and that's regardless of what happens with the nation, that duplicity, I think, the nations will have to answer for, not necessarily the people, the citizens, but definitely the rulers will have to answer for that. And I also think that a kingdom, a nation, there is a certain collective sort of personality that they develop, and I think that if that collective persona leads to suffering and violence and various forms of wickedness, I think that people should have a conscience, a sense in their conscience that something's not right here, and I think that we will have to account for that as well. But that's the best that I can offer. It's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think that Jesus was sort of doing this mustard seed kingdom where he was building a kingdom from the individuals up, and so he wasn't here to tell other countries how to do anything because he was bringing an alternative to it,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's my take. Do you
Yeah.
have any thoughts on that?
I have absolutely nothing because, again, this is a newer one that I was just seeing, but I really I like your response, and yeah, so yeah, I'm not gonna muck it up with anything that it would just confuse our questioner, I think. All right, and then we had one going back to my last sermon that was about anger.
Anger.
And yeah, a friend of the show, she sent in quite a few questions, and we cannot get to them all, but a couple of them. She was just wondering if we could explain or list some more about the reasons we get angry. And then follow up to that, what reason for anger would competitiveness fall under?
Mhm.
And that I'm going to be so very transparent and say in this moment, I'm not going to touch the competitiveness question because I find myself to be a surprisingly competitive person in loving ways, though. I'm not like angry about it. I don't, well, anyway, I'm not going to touch it because I got to do some self work there, I think, before I could offer anything to anybody else. So I will defer to you, Dan, about
Mm.
competitiveness and where that falls
Yeah.
in the anger sphere.
Well, I would say the big thing for anger and competitiveness, and there is a groundbreaking book on.
Of
Let's see,
course,
where
there
is it?
is.
Oh,
Where is?
here it is.
Oh, there it
Yes, yes, yes. No, I do talk about this in Confident Humility, where confidence it has to do with, like, in competitive situations, you want to be confident, and what threatens that, I think, is the same thing that creates anger in competitive situations, and that is, like, when you feel like your worth as a person and your
is.
identity as a person hinges on whether or not you win or lose. Well,
Yeah.
now everything that doesn't go right in the game is no longer just that didn't work, but it's actually a threat to your personhood. And you get so reactive when your personhood is threatened by a silly game that you're playing. And so I think that's a big one. When you feel like less of a person when you lose, that means that the consequences for the game, it's no longer just points. It's your personhood, and that's going to make you emotionally vulnerable. And that's why I argue that the only way to have real confidence is to live in the security of God's love for us. And because then when you play, nothing is on the line. You have nothing to lose in that situation. You can just be competitive and strive to win just for the sake of winning the game. And if you win, then hallelujah, it's joy, it's great. And if you lose, it's not a big deal. It's you did your best. And now some people have a hard time when their team loses. Let's just say, like a team vicariously.
Ooh. What?
Hey, but the Chiefs won, so
They
yes,
did, baby.
yes,
Took care
yes.
of business. Anyway.
Yeah.
No, but like even at work, you know that like even at work, we play these sometimes silly little games, these little
Mhm.
bonding moments, and yeah, Shawna is a bit competitive.
Well, I think competitive is good though. Competitive is good as long as egos are not on the line.
That's right. We
So
gotta keep it in proper
that's
perspective. I
that's right.
like
But
that.
yeah, I love playing games to win. When I play a game, I want to win. And
Yeah.
that's why, I want to play Rob Kistler in Bag Toss again because he beat me, and
Mm,
I think it was a fluke, and I think I can win. And so
absolutely.
I want a rematch.
That's right, you do. And you will get it and you will crush him.
Yeah.
All right, good job, good job. All right, so can you explain, Liz, some more about the reasons we get angry? And oh gosh, there are there are so many reasons we get angry. And in the sermon, I talked about how many times anger isn't necessarily that the actual real or first emotion that we're feeling. It may be something like we were feeling some other things and it just never got dealt with, and then it leads to anger, which usually is some sort of outburst. So I said that sometimes, many times, it's not the first emotion, but it is
Mhm.
the loudest. And
Yeah.
so there are all kinds of reasons underneath the surface emotions that we could be experiencing. And so just a few, like there could be guilt or hurt, or a lot of times fear,
Mhm.
sometimes grief. It exposes itself in anger, or rejection, or
Mhm.
loneliness. There's a ton of them. Humiliation. We tapped a little bit into what anger disguising depression looks like. And so there are a variety of emotions that we experience, and sometimes we don't recognize those or we don't deal with those, and so our way of protecting ourselves from those is anger. We and I'm going to say lash out because that's just the imagery I get when I think, oh, I'm, anger. It's a lot of times it's a protective mechanism to shield us from danger or harm, or perceived danger or harm. And so there are a lot of reasons why we experience anger, but I didn't know if you wanted to
Yeah.
elaborate on any of that.
Well, I think that's good, and I love that the way you phrase that, where anger is the loudest emotion. It's not necessarily the cause of itself. In fact, anger is usually a secondary emotion to something else, and you
Mm-hmm.
feel it because if you have some other vulnerability, or something is being threatened, or a
Mm-hmm.
goal that you're trying to achieve is being frustrated. And that's why, for me, I think a big way to fight against anger in general is to have goals, not expectations.
Yeah.
Because when you have expectations, what that means is that, and I used to do this where, okay, I know it takes me 11 minutes to drive to work. And so I kind of take my time and eat oatmeal and listen to some music. And see, I still got 13 minutes left. I'm good. And then I get in the car and I'm like, oh, yep, still I got 11 minutes and I should be there, no problem. And in my mind, I'm imagining myself parking and going in with 30 seconds to spare, and I'm there right on time. But then the stoplight is out, and now we're all taking turns to go, and it takes twice as long. So now suddenly that eats up an extra minute. And then some Yahoo was playing on their phone, and they rode off the road, and they hit a phone pole, and now it takes, I got to go around that, and then I get to the parking lot, and they're doing new blacktop, and so I have to park farther away. So now all of these things come up, and now I'm getting mad because how dare they put blacktop in? It's supposed to take me 11 minutes to get to work. It's been 15 minutes now, and now suddenly I have a reason for anger because I had this expectation, and I had this internal commitment to that, and that just makes you vulnerable to frustration in life in general. So I think those types of things, and connecting your ego with performance is another big one as well, as I've already said. So
yeah, absolutely. And I just, it's so interesting how all of this kind of ties together, because we've talked before on the show and in previous sermons about the need for margin and creating space. So we're not always so rushed, and we're not always just like maxed out emotionally, spiritually, financially, time wise, all of that. And when we don't, I believe that is a part of a recipe that could lead to experiencing some anger, because we are hurried and harried, and we're rushed, and we're tired, and we're maxed out. And so we're depleting ourselves, and we can't regulate in real time. And so then anger. And then last thing I'll say is I think of like a cat, like, or that kind of hisses. They're not typically predatory. Like, they're more like, it's fear. They're scared. And so they're just trying to, like, it's a protective thing. And so there are a variety of things that you could really be experiencing underneath the surface. So that's why I think it's important to just take time to try to discover what it is that your body is experiencing and have some margin. So,
yes. Good job.
All right. Anything else, Dan?
No, I love the margin concept though, because I think, that's a good way to put it. So,
yeah. All right. Well, Dragon Slayers, week 1, flee to the wilderness done, but more to come. So continue to tune in. But before we end our time together today, we got nugget time. That's right. Woohoo! A little robust nugget dance for you guys. My nugget is super short, Dan, so I'm going to let you choose whether you go first
you
or
go
last.
ahead. You go ahead.
Oh, what was it? Oh, yeah. Okay, got it. Wilderness. I really, the beauty of being a part of our church, and any church, I will say, hopefully you're hearing these sermons and you are doing something with them after you listen, right? You're processing, you're reflecting, you're looking for ways to implement, you're discussing, you're watching the MuseCast, you're doing all these things. And so I've been reflecting on like what it means to flee to the wilderness. And I couldn't help but remember times when I didn't flee to the wilderness, but I found myself in the wilderness. I found myself in a place of desperation or fear, or in need of something, and just in a wilderness, and how beautifully each and every time God met me there. And so I thought about it from that standpoint of times I've been in the wilderness, and just remembering that God has always met me and didn't leave or forsake me and leave me where he found me. He helped to provide what I needed and lead me out. And then I think of others who are in the wilderness who need God to meet them. And I know that God will. And it's just that sometimes we are those vessels that he uses to meet people that are in the wilderness of whatever that may look like for them. And so just being open to two parts of it. One, when I feel myself in the wilderness, remembering that God will meet me. I am not forsaken. And then two, many times he will want to use me as the one who can help, not the one, please, that's not what I mean, but as a one who can go in and yes, the one. who can go in and help meet a need. If it doesn't have anything to do with worms or bugs or insects or anything like that, I'm your girl. I can go in there. But yeah, so that's just, I've just been really reflecting on wilderness and the different ways that that has played out in my life.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think I was thinking about the wilderness also. And
Mm,
I think for me, like, to go into the wilderness and to go someplace where you're you're kind of going like outside of your comfort zone. You're by definition taking a step into a place that's less secure externally. In order to do that, you have to really be secure internally,
mm,
and it's really hard to take those steps and to serve people and to help in those
mm.
situations if you're not getting all of your life from Christ, if you're not
Yeah.
really resting in that unsurpassable love that God has for us. And for me, I was thinking of I did a sermon I think 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, called "Anti-Fragile Faith,"
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's what I kept thinking of. Is it's like faith is anti-fragile. The more it's tested, the stronger it can get. And so maybe I'll leave a link to that sermon in the show notes, because that's just been a helpful way for me to
Yeah.
think of faith and wilderness. Is that it's hard, and it's scary, but that's what makes our faith and our faithfulness stronger,
Mhm.
is when we're tested like that, and we can come through the other side.
Amen.
That is my nugget.
I love it. Hey, Dan, we got in some good questions in the last few
Mhm.
weeks and good comments. And if
Yeah.
anyone is like, oh, I don't want to be left out, I want to send in
Well,
a question or a comment.
right, right down
Oh,
there.
looky
Yeah,
there.
there it
Right
is.
there. Musecast at whchurch.org. Thank you guys for tuning in. We look forward to chatting. And hey, join us next week because
That's right.
we are going to continue in the Dragon Slayer series, looking at Revelations 12 and, whoa, that was my very first time to say it wrong. Revelation
Yeah.
12 and 13.
Still traumatized.
I am. All right, you guys. Thank you. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time.